Good evening, everybody. I'm Elena Barbera. Welcome to the Base Mother Show. Got an interesting conversation coming for you tonight. We're going to talk about the great state of Maryland. We've got an unfriendly business environment, abysmal results in public schools, crushing taxes. Now, they do have the best crab cakes in America and a beautiful landscape and coastline. But what good is it if the leadership continues to drive the citizens into the ground? Current Governor Wes Moore famously lied about being a Bronze Star recipient. That should have been enough to discredit him, or perhaps the fact that he turned a huge state surplus into a devastating deficit. Yet he's running again in what can only be described as an act of unbridled hubris. Tonight, I'm talking with John Myrick, who's running for governor on the Republican ticket. Stick around and let's learn from Maryland's mistakes and hear what John has to say about how the state can once again be filled with hope and prosperity. Let's bring him in. Mr. Myrick, hello.
Good evening, Elena. Thank you for having me on.
Thank you for coming. I'm very excited to meet you. I do not live in Maryland. The reason I want to talk to candidates from around the country is to help spread the word about what is going on in other places so that we can, as Americans, learn from other states' mistakes and get ahead of them before things like what's happening in Maryland comes to a state near you, because these types of devastating policies have a way of spreading. You have a long history of service to this country. I have a list here. You were a Harford County Deputy Sheriff earlier in your career. You served 23 years in the United States Air Force Reserves. Thank you, sir. You're a civilian senior intelligence officer. You're considered an expert in threats like terrorism, drugs, and weapons of mass destruction. You've spoken at congressional briefings, NATO briefings. I mean, you are clearly highly qualified in service to your country, but what's making you run for governor now?
Well, Elena, thank you for laying out my resume for me. The bottom line is, as a Marylander, and my family has been here in Maryland since 1640. Wow. So we have 3.5 centuries of being here in Maryland and serving Marylanders and this country. And as a Marylander, I can no longer sit back and watch the train wreck without doing something about it. As you mentioned, Wes Moore has absolutely run this state into the ground in less than 3 years. He took a $5.5 billion surplus, ran us into a $3.5 billion deficit last year, resulting in the largest tax increase in Maryland history. Now, for most people, they think, largest tax increase in Maryland history, how long can that be? We're one of the original 13 states, so we've been around for a while. Good people can no longer sit back on the sidelines and expect things to change.
Yeah, I'm so glad. It is so fantastic. I've been talking to people who are first-time candidates and saying this same thing, and this is what's going to change the country when we get fresh blood in there, people who aren't part of the swamp, to use the term that we use all the time. Sure. I'm really thrilled, and it is not, believe it or not, that often that an American like myself, who's a second generation, my ancestors came from Italy, that we meet, an OG American like yourself, whose family has been here for centuries, and I can tell you, I think it's super cool. So I would love to talk to you just about your family's history some other time. We have other things to talk about right now. And before we really get into Maryland's issues, I want to talk to you about what happened in Minnesota today. Early this morning, we learned that during a back-to-school mass at the Annunciation School in Minneapolis, a crazed shooter broke through a window and started shooting into a crowd of children. 2 children were killed, 17 others were wounded, 14 of those children, 2 of which are in critical condition, but thankfully expected to survive. What do you, just go ahead. What do you have to say about this?
The events in Minneapolis this morning were an unspeakable tragedy. And my heart and the heart of my Lieutenant Governor running mate, Dr. Brenda Cham, they go out to the families and to the victims of this senseless tragedy. Far too often nowadays, we're seeing more and more of people who have serious mental health issues who are electing to try to deal with those issues by committing acts of unspeakable violence.
Yeah.
And that has to stop. This is, we live in a civilized society. This is never acceptable. This kind of violence should never be seen anywhere in the world, much less anywhere in our nation. And again, as events unfold and as the investigation continues, I'm sure we will learn much more than what we even care to know about the crazed shooter and their motivations behind this attack. But to attack anyone, much less a group of children at a religious school, is completely and utterly unacceptable in a civilized society.
Well, yes to all that. What do you think we can do as a nation to protect our school children? I mean, we have problems at all levels in crime, but just to focus on school children, what can we do? Because this is happening all over the country. None of us are exempt from it.
No, that's true, and you're right. We're seeing tragedies like this unfold all across the country. One thing we could do, and one thing we would like to do here in Maryland, is reinforce the school resource officer programs that we have across the state of Maryland and across the nation, for that matter.
Mm-hmm.
We need armed law enforcement or security personnel guarding our children. We guard our borders. We guard our airports. You can't walk into a sporting event anywhere in this country without going through metal detectors and without seeing an army of armed police officers and security officers. So we'll protect our sporting events, but we won't protect our children in their most vulnerable state in their schools. We have the resources. We have personnel available. We have former military personnel who volunteer every day to do this, but they can't because of varying laws and varying rules throughout the country. But it's time. It's time we took school security at least as seriously as we do security at sporting events or casinos or on a cruise ship.
Yeah, I think that's a completely reasonable response. My church has armed security during services. It's sad that we have to do that.
Very sad.
But I'm grateful that we can go and worship in peace and feel safe. And I don't think everybody even at the church even knows that they're being protected that way. But, there are states like, say, Boston, Massachusetts, where they took those resource officers out of the schools because they were offensive, and they were upsetting to the children, which is absolute hogwash. And it may make absolutely no sense. So I like your plan, and I'd love to see kids in Maryland, be exempted from this kind of horror.
Absolutely.
I would really love to see that. And we're going to get into what else is going on in Maryland schools in a bit. But okay, let's change gears and get back to the money. You just said that Wes Moore had a $5+ billion surplus when he hit office, and now he is over $3 billion in a deficit. That's like an $8-9 billion gap that he has managed of money that he's managed to blow through. Just please comment on that, and please tell me, if you can, how Marylanders' lives are better after a $9 billion spending spree of sorts.
Well, that's the biggest problem. Marylanders' lives are not any better now. He, as you said, he blew through about a $9 billion swing of taxpayer money in just 2 years in office. He ran us into a $3.5 billion deficit. And by the Maryland state constitution, we require a balanced budget in this state every year. And we only do our budgets annually here. So our General Assembly, which is Democrat supermajority here in Maryland, decided that they were going to raise taxes by nearly $2 billion, $1.87 billion. which constituted the largest tax increase in Maryland history. That was over the objection of every single Republican legislator
Good.
in our General Assembly. And our Republican legislators this year didn't just complain about the problem. They actually proposed an alternative budget that would have cut state spending across the board by 5% and would not have raised taxes by 1 single cent on Maryland taxpayers. And they were laughed out of the room. So, this governor has wasted precious resources, and his policies continue to damage Maryland's economy and the pockets of every household of every single Marylander. We now have some of the highest energy costs in the country. According to the PJM, the company that actually does the management of our electric system here, energy prices in Maryland under the Moore administration have risen by 1,012% since 2023. 2 years, and our energy costs have gone up 1,012%. And they have put the blame squarely on the policies, the environmental policies of the Moore administration.
Which, by the way, aren't helping the environment.
No, they're destroying the environment. And again, make no mistake, I value our environment and our resources greatly. This is Maryland. We have the Chesapeake Bay, the world's largest estuary system here in Maryland. We have the mountains. We have the seashore. We have it all. This is an outstanding and dynamic state, and its environment needs to be protected. But you don't do that on the backs of Marylanders with technology that is unproven or is too immature to actually do the job.
Yeah, I mean, out here in the world of regular people, there's a lot of suspicion about why all this money has been spent because it's clearly ineffective. But we don't need to speculate on that, but you know what I'm saying. So you have a problem where you have to lower taxes and help people, lower energy costs, but also now deal with this deficit. Obviously, spending is an issue. So where else do you see that you can help with the spending problem?
Well, to start with, one of the very first things that we intend to do once I'm in office is, and I've been a proponent for line by line accounting of taxpayer dollars long before there was a Doge. Having worked in the federal government for over 30 years, I've seen fraud, waste, and abuse at a galactic scale. And I know it happens here in the state of Maryland as well. And Marylanders have a right. This is taxpayer money. And this is what the people in Annapolis here have forgotten about a long time ago. They are not spending theoretical dollars. They are spending taxpayer dollars, hard-earned taxpayer dollars. And taxpayers have a right to know where every penny of that money is being spent. So we will implement a line-by-line accounting of every state department and agency once I am in the office. And where there is waste, we will cut it. Where there is fraud, we will prosecute it, because no one is going to steal Marylanders' tax dollars on my watch. We're also going to implement some tax relief for Marylanders, obviously. Marylanders right now face the 5th highest tax burden in the nation. And it's all because of wasteful spending. Our neighbor to the north, Pennsylvania, is run by a Democrat governor as well, Governor Shapiro.
Yeah.
They have about twice as many people in Pennsylvania as we do here in Maryland. Their annual budget this year, is $50 billion. Maryland's budget this year is $67 billion. So Pennsylvania is providing better services at a cheaper cost to twice as many people as is Maryland. That is not a political issue. That is a competence issue. They know how to budget. They know how to spend their money wisely, and they provide the services that their citizens need. Marylanders deserve the same thing, and we're going to give it to them.
That is just mind-boggling. I mean, if I worked at any company, I mean, if I ran the cash register at McDonald's and had a comparable, level of waste and mismanagement, I would be fired. If I was the CEO of any private organization, I would have been booted after 5 minutes with
Oh,
these
it's worse.
kind of.
It's worse than that here in Maryland. Last year, two state departments reported overspending their budgets by $250 million apiece. Okay, that's $500 million of taxpayer money. This governor did not ask for an audit to find out where that money went. And more importantly, he held no one accountable. He asked for no resignations as a result of $500 million of overspending. Now, I ran multi-billion-dollar programs for the federal government before I retired. If any of my budget people would have walked into my office and said, "Hey, boss, we have a small accounting error. We've overspent by $500 million," before they got the word billion out, I'd have fired them and had them escorted from the building. This governor asked for no accountability, for no one's resignation.
Well, that just seems to be his MO. No accountability,
No
he's Mr.
accountability.
Excuses. In my intro, when I talked about how on his White House internship application, he said that he had been the recipient of a Bronze Star. And later, when he was called out for it, he was like, "Oh, that was just a mistake."
Right.
And so like that's just full of excuses and no accountability. That's disgraceful and really embarrassing.
And it is. And being a combat decorated veteran myself, I take high offense at that. Now, I applaud Governor Moore's military service. Anyone who serves in uniform and to defend this nation owes a debt of gratitude to. And I consider him a brother in arms. But the bottom line is, I am deeply offended as a combat decorated veteran myself by someone who would claim that they received a decoration that they clearly did not receive. And that's the tip of the iceberg with this gentleman.
Yeah.
Every time he opens his mouth, seemingly, inaccuracies and factual misrepresentations seem to spill out. He mentions every time he talks about our budget that he cut Maryland's budget last year. Well, there's only one problem with that. The Maryland budget for the fiscal year prior to this one was $63 billion. The budget this year is $67 billion. Now, I'm not a math whiz, but even I know 67's more than 63. So when the governor has been asked publicly by the press to explain how he actually cut a budget that went up by $4 billion, he literally walks off the stage and heads to an emergency exit.
Please, we see this all the time, don't we? That's just embarrassing, and I don't know why people aren't mad about it. Yes, right. The American people do deserve better than that. And we've seen the average American who used to think things like politics don't affect me. We've seen them coming to the table more and more, and I think that Maryland is counting on that for change. But how do you get that message out? When you're ready to take on like a Trump level Doge fight. If you get into office and you start doing this line by line, they're just gonna come at you from inside the legislature and of course on the press. How are you gonna handle that?
First off, Marylanders are tired of this. I hear this, we have been canvassing the state since February. And at every event, we've done over 200 events. At every event we go to, Democrats, Republicans, and unaffiliated voters, they all are angry here in Maryland because this legislature, this governor raised their taxes and raised over 300 new taxes and fees this year alone. They're running businesses out of the state, so they're taking away job opportunities and economic opportunities in a state that already is suffering economically. And Marylanders are tired of it. So I'm not having to do a whole lot as far as getting that message out.
Good.
People already get it. When they go to the motor vehicles department to renew their tags, our tag renewal now is nearly $200 for a year.
Wow.
To renew your tags.
Wow.
Pennsylvania, it's $38. Virginia, to our south, it's $42. but ours is nearly $200 to renew your tags for 1 year. It's so expensive now that the state allows you to make payments to renew your tags for a year. Now, when you have to implement a payment plan to renew your tags, you're charging too much money.
That's the great.
It's crazy.
You're just full of crazy information tonight, sir.
It's insane. It's insane. We have a 3% IT tax here in Maryland now, which is destroying our IT businesses. So your internet now gets tacked on with a 3% new tax. If you do data storage. And this governor claims that AI and quantum computing is the centerpiece of his economic recovery plan here in Maryland. Yet one of our largest quantum computer companies, IonQ, which was a Maryland-based company, moved last month to Tennessee and publicly said it was because they can't deal with the Maryland business tax infrastructure, and they were going to get a better deal in Tennessee.
Tennessee, Florida, these are states that are gaining a lot.
They are, and they're gaining them because of their tax structure as opposed to ours. I mean, one of the things that Dr. Cham and I want to do is we want to give Marylanders relief, but we specifically want to give relief to our senior citizens, because we hear this all over the state too, that Marylanders are considering moving out of state to states like Tennessee, Florida, Texas, where there's no state income tax, because they can't afford to live here any longer. Now, that's sad when you've built your life here in Maryland and you feel like you're being run out of the state because you can't afford to be here any longer.
Yeah.
So we want to make all retirement income tax exempt from Maryland state income tax. We also want to make state property taxes exempt for any property owner over the age of 65, because Marylanders should not be penalized for living long enough to retire in Maryland.
You sound like my governor down here. I live in Florida now. You sound like Governor DeSantis, and I recently applauded him for that exact stance. Like, let's stop forcing Americans to rent their own property from the government, because if you don't pay your property taxes, they take your home.
They take it from you, right? Yeah. And Marylanders now, our seniors are having to make difficult choices because of the exorbitant expenses here in Maryland now, between paying your property tax or keeping your lights on, or paying your property tax or keeping the heat on in the wintertime. Yeah. That's a decision no Marylander should ever have to make.
No, not in a nation as prosperous as this.
No.
One thing that I came across, and this may be in other states also, but my mind was blown when I was studying Maryland today, and I learned something about an exit tax.
Oh, yes. One of our new taxes. If you sell your home and you are going to move to one of those more tax-friendly environments, you get to give the state 6% of the sale price, not the capital gains, because you also pay capital gains tax now on that money, but 6% on the sale price of your home if you are relocating out of the state of Maryland. So it's basically holding you hostage here in Maryland, which is absolutely absurd, and we're going to eliminate that tax.
I just cannot, I'm not a lawyer, but something about that just feels really illegal to me.
It does. These people have not met a tax they don't like or love, quite frankly. I mean, they have taxed pretty much everything except the air we breathe. And I hesitate to even mention that because I'm giving them an idea. It's ridiculous. They have taxed everything. And now they're talking about taxing or raising our state sales tax from 6% to 8%. And the governor's office is already projecting another $2 billion deficit this coming legislative session in January. Now, you just raised taxes by the largest increase in Maryland history, but you've already got a $2 billion deficit. How is that even possible?
Okay. With all that money that they're taking in, Let's talk about your largest city, or you can tell me more about the entire state, Baltimore.
Sure.
Baltimore is famous for its crime.
It is. It's the one of the it's in the top five cities in the entire nation as far as crime rates go, and that's sad. I mean, my family, my mother's family is from East Baltimore. My father's family from a suburb just outside the city limits called Dundalk. I grew up with visiting relatives in the city as a child every weekend, and the city used to be a vibrant, wonderful place. The city now is a shooting gallery. People are afraid to go out of their houses at night. The inner harbor, which used to be the centerpiece of and the pride of Baltimore, now is abandoned. They're about to bulldoze it because businesses have left because of the crime rate.
Wow.
And
what's
this
happening?
needs
What are
to
they
stop,
doing?
and it can stop. Baltimore City Police Department does an outstanding job with the very limited resources they have in a situation that they simply cannot win right now, because they've got a state and a city government that does not have their back. And as a former law enforcement officer, I promise them and every other law enforcement officer in the state of Maryland right now, I will always have their back.
I have a two-part question around this. Cops are finally getting support again, or, across the country. They're finally hearing somebody at the top say, I've got your back. And to hear you say it again, thank you. Two parts. So one, with all of the cleanup that's happening in DC, I've kind of wondered, these criminals aren't just going to come to Jesus and decide to not be criminals anymore necessarily.
No, they're coming to Maryland.
Right. Are they coming to Maryland?
Okay. Yes, I heard this. Yeah. I heard this weekend. Dr. Cham and I participated in a festival in an area called Suitland, which borders Washington, D.C. It borders Northeast Washington, D.C. Suitland is a town that gets a very bad rap because they have a lot of crime problems there and a lot of gun violence, a lot of black on black crime, because it's got such close proximity to Washington, D.C. and a high crime area in D.C. We participated in a peace walk there last Saturday with about 400 residents. And of those 400 people that were present, the mayors of Suitland and of some of the surrounding areas all spoke with me about the fact that while they applaud the president's deployment of the National Guard troops into Washington, D.C. to control crime, but the problem is it's simply forcing it outside the city limits into Maryland, into areas that are ill-equipped and underfunded to be able to deal with the additional criminal activity. And they were asking for help. Now, would we consider deploying National Guard troops here in Maryland to help law enforcement? Absolutely. If requested by the jurisdictions, I would absolutely consider doing that. Why? Because it's necessary. And safe streets, every Marylander deserves safe streets. I don't care where you live, from the lowest tenement project in the state to the multi-million-dollar homes in Potomac. Yeah. You deserve to be able to walk down the streets at night and be safe.
Absolutely. And we're seeing people in Washington, D.C. every single day. There are new news reports of citizens being interviewed saying, I have not felt this safe in my city in ages. It's cleaner. I can go out with my family. I took my wife out to dinner. We weren't looking over our shoulder the whole time. Yeah. That doesn't mean you shouldn't look over your shoulder. You still got to have street smarts.
Of course, you got to have street smarts. Right? Yeah.
But the fact that people are literally feeling it, and the numbers are showing that carjackings go down. There hasn't been a murder in 2 weeks in DC, right. Which is some kind of record.
That is a record. Yeah. I mean, but Maryland has the resources to improve our public safety. They're just being squandered, quite frankly, and they're being misappropriated. The laws that we passed in Maryland to have a state lottery and to allow casino gambling and to allow for recreational cannabis sales, all of those tax revenues were supposed to go to two things here in Maryland: public schools and public safety. And according to our Maryland Comptroller's website, every dime of that money last year went to the general fund. It did not go to public safety or public schools as it is legally earmarked to go. And we're talking about billions of dollars.
Yeah.
The Maryland State Lottery brought in $1.6 billion in tax revenue last year. Our casinos in Maryland brought in $841 million in tax revenue. Cannabis sales brought in $39 million in tax revenue. And every dime of that money went into our general fund and did not go where it was lawfully supposed to go. That will change under my administration.
Good. I mean, that general fund just seems to be some sort of abyss. You mentioned, the schools that this money was supposed to be going to. So
Yeah.
these numbers are famous. You may have heard them. In 2022, 7% of Baltimore students were proficient in math. But by 2024, that number rose to 12%. And I was reading some articles where they were, applauding themselves for raising it to 12% of students proficient in grade level math. This is not a win. 12%
No, this is not a win. Anybody the people who are patting themselves on the back on this are the people profiting from this. Maryland spends more than 37 other states in the union every year per capita on our educational system. We spend just under $20,000 per child across the state. Yet our 4th and 8th graders read and do math consistently below the national average. That is a poor return on that investment. A very poor return on that investment. The school superintendent of Baltimore City Public Schools makes $445,000 a year. The governor of Maryland only makes $185,000. So, and that superintendent came to Baltimore from another failed school system, Detroit, which is one notch below Baltimore in its test scores. So we keep giving this money out to people that are not interested in educating our children. A Maryland high school diploma is absolutely worthless if the graduate cannot read it.
Yeah.
And no Maryland business ever wants to hire a Maryland high school graduate who can't make change for $1. Why would you?
Wow.
Now, according to our state Board of Education, only about 25% of every dollar spent in Maryland on education actually makes it into the classroom. That means 75 cents of every dollar is being spent on overhead and administrative costs. That's ridiculous. And that's one of the chief reasons that I chose Dr. Brenda Cham as my running mate, as my lieutenant governor running mate. He is a special education teacher in Washington County. She has been teaching out there for almost 30 years. She's in the classroom every single day. She's also a former legislator in the Maryland General Assembly. So she brings the legislative experience and the classroom experience and a PhD in special education leadership to the table. We are going to fix Maryland's education system, and we will do it with bringing the General Assembly along if we have to, kicking and screaming to do it. But Maryland taxpayers and Maryland students deserve some accountability, and our students deserve a future. And right now, we're robbing them of that.
Yeah, you absolutely, not you, but the state absolutely is. We just saw in Chicago, $750 million shortfall in the school, the Chicago public school budgets. And they had to go lay off teachers assistants. They also had to, thankfully, lay off people like restorative justice coordinators who were just, these unnecessary, I'm sorry, I'm going to say unnecessary. You want to help poor kids, teach them to read, focus on reading, bring back some phonics. How about that?
Yeah, unlike our current governor, I am a product of the Maryland public school system. I went to Maryland public schools in Harford County, and I got a very good education. And we did not spend anywhere near, even adjusted for inflation, anywhere near the money we are spending today on education. And I was taught to read, to write, to do math, to do science, social studies. I was taught the basics so that I could succeed either at university or in the workforce. Maryland school students deserve a future. And right now, we are not giving that to them. If our governor now claims our school system is such a wonderful environment. Well, he sends his children to a private school in Baltimore County. If our schools are so great, Governor, why aren't your children attending Anne Arundel County Public Schools? Why are they going to a private school? And this governor has not made a decision as to whether or not the state of Maryland will opt into the federal program to allow school choice for parents. Yet
Yeah,
he
tell me more about
enjoys
that.
school choice for his children.
Yeah, right.
Now, again, Dr. Cham and I both are very big proponents for school choice. We also want to see the dollars follow the student, because the bottom line is, if you are paying taxes to a failed school system that is not educating your children and you have to pull them out, you should not have to shoulder the financial expense out of pocket while you are also still paying for a system that failed your child in the first place. And that kind of competition will spark improvement while we build the schools. We need to give parents choices.
Yeah, I absolutely love it. You know, the schools are falling apart around the country, public schools. There was an article in last week's New York Times about this new consulting firm that schools are hiring to help them convince parents to enroll their kids. Now, and they're giving, for every kid that this consulting firm brings in, they're giving them like $950. And they're making a fortune.
You want to convince parents to send their kids to public school? Teach the children how to read and do math.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay? If you show the parents that their children will prosper in your public schools, they will attend your public schools.
Yeah, I mean, look at, I grew up, I did go to Catholic school growing up, but you know, I had friends who were in the public school that was around the corner from my house, the same one my father went to when he was a little boy. And they had, you know, the regular program. And then they had what in New York City schools, what used to be called the Astor program for gifted kids. So everybody got an education that was appropriate with their natural interests and intelligence.
Right.
And that apparently is now insulting to some people. So we have to just dumb everything down.
Right, it's the lowest common denominator, and in the process, we are killing the future of our children. You know, our governor, our governor talks about how wonderful Maryland public schools are. He's never stepped foot in a Maryland public school. His parents left the state when he was 4 years old. He was educated in private schools. He went to the Valley Forge Military Academy. He went to private school. He's never stepped foot in a Maryland public school as a student. And therefore, any comment that he would make about that is disingenuous at best, a lie at worst.
Yeah, I mean, I would almost say if he came to the public schools and he said, I got this great education and I want to make sure every kid in public school also gets this education, I'd be like, all right, fine.
Yeah, I have no problem with that.
But
now, again, I am not faulting the governor for getting a good education by any stretch of the imagination. All I'm saying is that children whose parents can't afford to send them to a private school, those children deserve a quality education that will set them up for success in the future. And they deserve it now, not 20 years from now, now. And throwing money at a failed system is not the answer.
Yeah, I'll say we don't have another generation of children to waste the way we have the last generation. We're doomed if we let another generation grow up without basic life skills like reading and writing and counting.
Absolutely.
So yeah, thank you. I mean, before we go tonight, is there anything else that you want to talk about, you want to get across? Because we could do this all night, but
Well, yeah, of course. And again, I appreciate you bringing me on today, Elena. I really do thank you for that. Marylanders deserve better. I always say, first off, Brenda and I, we're not politicians. And I say that because in my experience, politicians talk about problems. Public servants solve them. I have spent my entire adult life as a public servant. being a public servant, I have always remembered for whom I work, and that is the people. In this case, the people of the state of Maryland. You know, the politicians in Annapolis forgot a long time ago that they work for the people. And I intend to show them and remind them of that. And I want Marylanders to remember that these people are spending your money to do your bidding. And if they are not doing that, they need to be held accountable. And you do that at the ballot box. These problems we've talked about are not partisan issues. They really aren't. You know, Democrats, Republicans, non-affiliated voters, they all pay taxes. They all want good public schools. They all want safe streets. They're not getting it. They all want roads that don't swallow their cars in potholes. They're not getting that here in Maryland, and they deserve it. Marylanders deserve better. You deserve a governor who will work with the administration. The federal government is Maryland's largest employer. Yet this governor has publicly said he will not work with our president. Well, that's great. And as a result, we've lost the FBI headquarters, which was going to bring 29,000 jobs to Maryland. We lost the Bureau of Engraving and Printing, the people that make our money. They were supposed to move to Maryland. That was a $1.9 billion project. We're losing 20,000 plus jobs at the National Institutes of Health in Bethesda. Those are not jobs that can just walk into the private sector and get jobs. You know, we're losing the USDA Agricultural Research Center in Beltsville, another 2,600 federal jobs that are being dispersed throughout the country. That place has been there for 100 years. We are hemorrhaging federal jobs, and you've got a governor who will not work with our largest employer. Well, your job as governor is to do the bidding of the people. And if you are unwilling to do that, you need to step aside and let someone who can do it. I've worked with Democrats, I've worked with Republicans at the federal level and at the state level. I can do that and will do that to benefit Marylanders, because every Marylander's voice matters and every Marylander deserves better. And we are going to give that to them.
Well, I cannot wait to see you debating in the primary, because you man.
I look forward to it.
So do I. Man, I'm going to have a lot to keep up with here. I'm so glad that you came today. Thank you so much. And everybody, if you're watching on YouTube or Rumble, links to Mr. Myrick's campaign and how you can donate to his campaign and learn more about the issues that he's standing up for are in the description. And John, I also will be sharing this, you know, on other platforms, right, and helping you get the word out. So thank you. I'm going to ask you to stay backstage for 1 second, and then I'll talk with you again for a moment, if you don't mind.
Sure, of course. Thank you. Thank you again for having me on.
Thank you. All right, everybody. Thank you for coming. We're going to be doing a lot more interviews with candidates around the country. Again, learning from other states' mistakes, so we're not just playing defense all the time. We can play offense and get ahead of it in states where things are sane. And maybe it'll help you to learn how to solve the problems if you're not in a sane place. Thank you again for watching. Please like this video, share it, help spread the word, drop a sub. God bless you, and God bless America. Good night.